The climate web is a massive climate change knowledge base. And one of the reasons it exists is to help counter the problem identified by Margaret Heffernan in her quote here. But another reason it exists is because there is so much information out there about climate change. And I love this Woodrow Wilson quote: "There is no idea in our heads that has not been worn shiny by someone else's brains." Certainly the case for climate change, and certainly the case for the focus of this video, which is carbon offsets. Now, I won't claim that carbon offsets is typical of all the hundreds of topics covered in the climate web, because I worked on the first carbon offset more than 30 years ago and spent decades in the field. So there's a lot of information in the climate web. But it is representative of how we are approaching hundreds of climate change topics. What I'm going to do in this video is very quickly show you some of the ways that you can explore carbon offsets in the climate web. So I've pinned a couple of top things at the top, a couple of tagged collections at the top, just to make this a little faster and easier. So for example, we have more than 3,000 index entries in the climate web, and some of them collected here are very relevant to the topic of carbon offsets. If I just go down, for example, to the carbon offsets deep dive index entry, you can see that you can go up to more general topic categories, down to more detailed topic categories, and then over here you can start to jump into the literature and lots of other information specific to carbon offsets. We've spent thousands of hours curating carbon offset relevant knowledge and news stories and videos and graphics in the climate web, and you can get into a lot of that through index entries. Now, what those index entries point you to, as you can see here, is in effect topical headings. And if I click on this collection of some of the topical headings that are relevant to the topic of carbon offsets, you can see how we've organized books, reports, etc., which are sources, news and opinion pieces, videos, extracted materials. These are graphics and ideas that we've pulled out of literature sources, networking categories, offset individuals, carbon offset networks, etc., etc. But what you can do here is, I'm just going to click on one of these topics, carbon offset sources, and you can then see there are lots of these subsets, hundreds and hundreds of documents and other materials organized here in the climate web having to do with carbon offsets. Again, there is no idea that hasn't already been worn shiny by someone else's brain. But we also carry this whole idea a big step further in terms of what we call dashboards. And these are taking information from a lot of the other places that I've already pointed out and organizing it for a particular purpose. And I'm just going to show you a few of these because this starts to give you a real feel for the power of this software and for the power of the climate web in helping come up to speed and exploring complicated topics. So here we've got aviation offsets and deforestation. And you can jump into that and really understand what that conversation has been about. Will aviation offsets be the solution to deforestation? A big topic of conversation in the last couple of years, and you can quickly come up to speed on it through this tagged collection. Another example has to do with mitigation potentials in terms of carbon offsets. What is the mitigation potential for all sorts of different mitigation options? Because that can give you some insight into carbon offsets. This isn't as directly relevant a tagged collection, but you can see we pull together tons of numbers and then organize them in a way that makes it easy to take a look and scan through, and you can always track back to the original source of these numbers. And you can see there's lots of other things here in terms of scoring carbon offsets, offset demand, evaluating carbon offsets, critiques of carbon offsets, lots of organized material here. I'm just going to show you one last thing, our carbon offsets mini course. This is a pretty advanced course that walks you through the key issues associated with carbon offsets, and by just hovering over it, you can see that it dumps in and goes into more detail, and you get into the question of additionality testing and type 1 and type 2 error, which is key to really understanding carbon offsets. And people have enjoyed this course, learned a lot from this course, as you can see from the quote here from salesforce.com. And by the way, you can also access a lot of this information through our free ebook, which is at our website, theclimateweb.com, under ebooks, and you can download the free ebook there, as opposed to exploring this online. Everything I've shown you here, most of what I've shown you here, is open access. You can do online. You can download the Climate Web. The beauty is we can extract information. For example, we could extract carbon offset information, create a separate brain that could then be private access for specific people working on a project or whatever. We can go in and do more of these dashboards on almost any climate relevant topic. It's a very powerful software allowing us to explore this and hundreds of others of climate change topics. If this can be of value to you, we'd love to talk about it. Thanks.